Good morning, everyone. What I want to do to accompany the reading that I had you do for Chapter 2. So Chapter 2 is goals, habits, and self-management, and something that I actually spent a lot of time, I have spent a lot of time in past semesters, and not as much this time, is the topic of motivation. So I thought rather than having you read about it, I'll have you listen to a relatively short lecture on it. Okay, this is a topic that I'm fascinated about, and I've been really interested in it for a number of years. I was at a conference many years ago, and I went to a workshop on motivation, and I was struck by a quote, and I'm not going to get it exactly right. I'm going to paraphrase it. The question is not, what can I do to motivate students? The question is, what can I do to create the conditions under which students can motivate themselves? Because if you think about it, everyone is motivated by something different. So anyways, what I want you to do, I just assume that you are as fascinated by theories as I am. So bear with me. This is what's going to happen to you in other classes. Professors are going to, yes, I know, professors are going to lecture, and you're going to have to make sense of what they're saying. So this might be a good opportunity for you to attempt to take some basic notes, and then afterwards see how much you remember. So I'm going to tell you a couple of theories. The first scientist who really studied motivation was HARLOW, and he was doing this work in the 1940s. So basically, his work was done with rhesus monkeys. That's what you see on the left. Not Reese's like the candy. It's rhesus. Oh, brother. R-H-E-U-S. And they were in a lab, and he gave them this puzzle. Let me minimize this so you can see the puzzle a little bit better. Very simple puzzle. It was a wooden block. It had a hinge, and it had a little hook here. And so basically, to solve the puzzle, let's see what had to happen. The whoever was solving the puzzle had to first pull out this pin, move the hook, and then flip the puzzle up. Not really exciting, but okay. So HARLOW wanted to see, how long it would take for the monkeys to solve the puzzles, and basically what he did was he put the puzzles in the cage about a week before he started the experiment, because he realized that to introduce something new into the monkey's environment could skew the results. So what happened was these puzzles are sitting there, and he found that these monkeys, who are in general pretty curious, were very interested in these puzzles, and without any prompting at all, started to solve the puzzles. And so he was a little nonplussed by this. What did this mean? So what he would do is, once the monkey solved the puzzles, he would give them some raisins, because these monkeys really liked raisins. And he found that as he started to reward them, the monkeys stopped doing the puzzles. Okay. Now this was completely against what the psychology world knew at the time. At that time, they knew that there were two things that caused people to do what they did. People did things because there was a reward, or people did things because they were afraid of a punishment. In fact, we refer to this as the carrot and the stick. So you think about a donkey. Why will a donkey pull a heavy load? Well, if you hold a carrot out in front of him, he will seek the reward. Or if you hit him on the butt with a stick, he will seek to avoid the punishment. So what HARLOW said was, there's another drive. There's something that can motivate these monkeys and he assumed also humans. And basically, that's not either rewards or punishment. And he was laughed at. And in fact, he stopped studying motivation and started studying attachment. That's what he's most known for now. So fast forward about 20 years, Edward DECI was a graduate student looking for a topic for his dissertation, and he came across Harlow's work, and he thought this was interesting. So he brought people in. You always have two groups. You have the control group and the experimental group. So he had two groups sitting in a room, and they had these puzzle pieces that could be put together in many different ways. And he said to both of the groups, solve as many puzzles as you can. And there were pictures of different configurations. And so people would sit there and start fiddling around with these blocks. And he said, "Oh, excuse me, I have to go check on the computer." And in those days, the computers were as big as a room. So he left the room, but basically he went to an adjoining room and was able to watch the participants through I guess, I don't know, it looked like a mirror, but it was actually a window, so he could observe the students while they didn't know they were being observed. And I'm going to make up the numbers because I left my book elsewhere, so I don't have the data. The first day, everyone solved approximately, in this span of 20 minutes, they solved approximately 7 puzzles. Or they put together 7 puzzles. The next day, he comes in and he says to one group, "I've got money. For every puzzle that you solve, I will give you, $1, which in 1960 was worth a lot more than it is now." And again, he left the room, and what he found was the group where he didn't tell them he had money, they again solved about 7 puzzles, maybe 8. The group where he promised them money went bananas and solved 15 puzzles. Okay, so then the third day, he comes back and, to group B, it's the same, see how many puzzles you can solve, and he leaves the room, and no big surprise, every day they solved approximately 7, 8 puzzles. The experimental group, he said, "Oh, you guys did such a great job yesterday that I don't have any money, so I'm sorry I can't pay you today." And what happened was the people there solved about 4 puzzles in the same time period. So what he said was, when we motivate people extrinsically, when the motivation comes from the exterior, from others, from someone paying you, it tends to backfire. Right? So it was great that second day, they went crazy, and then when this external, when the reward was taken away, they stopped doing it. And what he said was, basically, it's intrinsic motivation that is most useful. If people are interested in something, if we are doing things for ourselves, or the motivation comes from ourselves, we will actually be motivated. And this is actually pretty much the theory that is in place today. But there are a couple of variations about this. So this idea of why do people do what we do and what happens when we do the things we do. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this thing called the marshmallow test. Walter Mischel did this in the 70s in California. He had he had young children who were at a daycare center at the university, and they were about 4 years old, and he would sit them down, or the researcher would say, find out what they liked, and a lot of times it was marshmallows. And so they would say to the kids, here's a marshmallow, and I'm going to leave the room. I'm going to leave you in front of this marshmallow, and if you can wait until I come back, I will give you 3 marshmallows. And then they would leave the children for 10, 15 minutes, and you can see what this little boy is going through. It's excruciating. And then ultimately, some children ate the marshmallows, some children did not eat the marshmallows. And so the results, and then what they did is they followed these children for many years, and they found the children who could resist eating the marshmallow, who could delay gratification, who were motivated by something other than what was right in front of them, were the students who were more likely to graduate from high school. They were more likely to hold a job. They were less likely to to be incarcerated, to have children at a young age. Okay. I will tell you, you could go online and look at marshmallow test. It's funny to watch. There seems to be a lot of scientific validity. The results have not necessarily been replicated, meaning people do this now and they're finding slightly different results. It's important to realize that the people that MISCHEL was studying tended to be children of the university employees, the faculty, the librarians. And so when they've done this in other countries, they found that children overall are much more able to wait. One theory is that children in America know that when an adult says, "I'll be back in a few minutes might not be a few minutes. And in other countries, if an adult says, "I will do something," they will do it. These results are also, when you do this with children from a lower socioeconomic group, they're much more likely to eat the marshmallow or whatever, the M&Ms. And the idea is these are kids who know that, hey, if something is offered to you, you better get it now because you don't know what will happen. So anyways, interesting, fascinating. I'm not sure about this one, even though I love to watch the videos. Okay. This has got to be one of my favorites. Roy Baumeister is a psychologist out of, I'm pretty sure it's Harvard. Okay, and they did this experiment with college students. They actually had 3 groups of college students. And one group, they asked these students to not eat all day and then to come to the lab. And they sat them down. One group, they just sat and said, could you wait for a couple of minutes while we get the experiment set up? One group, they said, oh, while you're waiting, help yourself to a cookie. And the third group, they said, while you're waiting, help yourself to a radish, which honestly is my least favorite vegetable probably. And then they came in with these puzzles. They weren't jigsaw puzzles, and they're actually impossible puzzles. And they said, spend some time solving these puzzles. The students who, remember, they were all hungry when they came in. So the students who had no food and the students who had cookies, who were able to eat the cookies, persisted for 20 minutes. And the students who had not eaten all day and were told they could eat radishes were only able to persist for 8 minutes. So Baumeister's theory has to do with willpower, that as we make decisions throughout a day, as we get tired, we use up our willpower, and then we are less motivated to do the things that we need to do. One more theory. Oh, I didn't realize how bad this was. Angela Lee Duckworth has a theory. She refers to the book she wrote is Grit, and she's talking about the power of passion and perseverance. And so basically, I'm so sorry. I thought it was really clear. Okay, what she said was she found that the students who were, the people who were most successful in spelling bees, national spelling bees, in passing a middle school math class, in getting through Beast Week at West Point, at becoming a master violin player, all had 2 things in common. They had a deep passion for whatever it was they were working on, and they persisted. They persevered for a long period of time. They actually put in the practice that was necessary. They didn't give up easily. Okay. So it's not necessarily the people who are most intelligent who are more successful. It seems that there's something else that's going on in terms of motivation. And then the last, I'll find a better picture for this, and then I'll share it with you at a later point. The last one I want to talk to you about is Daniel Pink. Now, Daniel Pink, he did not come up with theories. He wrote a book called Drive, and he's talked about the old motivation, which was a biological. This is a lot based on the work of HARLOW, where we do things because we need to eat because we're hungry, we need to sleep because we're tired, or Motivation 2.0 was the carrot and the stick, and then we'll skip to motivation 3.0, where he said this is what's currently in vogue, and what they're saying is there are 3 things that go into motivating a person: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy means you have to have a certain sense that you are in charge. You are doing things because you want to do that. It's a little bit of the intrinsic motivation. There has to be the idea of mastery. You have to be engaged in what you're doing, and you have to be able, if we set you a task that is impossible, you are not going to be engaged. You are not going to be able to master it. If we set you a task that is too easy, there's no engagement also. And the last one, purpose. There has to be a meaning to what it is that you are doing. If you're doing it just because someone else told you to, then you're not going to be motivated. Okay, so all of these theories about motivation, and as I said, I'm fascinated by it. But we keep coming back to the question, even if we understand what motivates people in general or what motivates an individual, then what? What do we do with this knowledge? There's a great quote by Zig Ziglar, who is a psychologist, and he said, people complain that motivation doesn't last. Neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. So the idea is you can't be motivated once and it lasts forever. You've got to keep looking at what it is that motivates you. And my new thinking, I'm less enamored of the idea of motivation, and I am more interested in the idea of habits. And that's what is in the first part of chapter 2. So I'd like you to read about that and figure out how do habits, or this deliberate practice and repetition, have an impact on why we do the things that we do. And I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm going to turn off this, whatever it's called, video.